Okay. I'm not sure if it's going to let me stream this or not. Just going to check here, see if we've got this going on. Okay, have we got sound? We do have sound. Sorry for the audio yesterday. I realised that I hadn't actually set up the microphone correctly. I picked the wrong option by mistake. So I'm an idiot, basically. And just to put that out there. Anyway, so today I've decided that I'm going to stream, or I'm going to try and stream every day. I'm not going to stream for as long as I did yesterday. That was just kind of like a bit of fun, doing whatever the hell that I wanted to do. But I think I'm just going to do some good old-fashioned reaction content. Because I started listening to this. Where's that wire gone? I started listening to this. I listened to about 2 minutes of it. And oh boy, it's a doozy. I'm going to tell you now, it's a doozy. And I'm going to point out some very interesting things, because basically there's a very pernicious idea, very insidious idea in the academic world around kind of like sex and kinks and stuff like that, and how they can be normalized to children. And we're going to get into this. I'm not going to explain it too much. I don't want too much of a preamble. I just want you to see it in real time, and I will point out exactly what he's doing as he's doing it. So without further ado, let's get into this.
They want. Move.
All right, so the question was, anyone of any age should be allowed to physically express themselves however they want. Obviously, this is within the frame of the trans question, more or less. So, but there will be, it will bring up some very interesting discussion. Let's just say that.
Okay, decide amongst...
So it's interesting that the women are on the disagree, both of them, and the men are on the agree. Although I will say this man is like a little bit almost on the neutral, I guess. He just like slightly agrees, whereas the other guy, he basically agrees without, not strongly agrees, but basically just agrees, right?
Amongst yourselves who you want to come and do the disagree, and why don't you move to the agree, please? Okay.
Would you like to start?
Okay. There was a time when I would have been over there. The reason I'm standing here, I don't know, surely this story made it to the US, is in Ontario there was the teacher who was showing up to school wearing these ginormous fetish breasts.
All right, just take one look at him and what do you think? What do you think? What comes to mind? Teacher with giant fake breasts. Just so we know what we're talking about here. This is what we're talking about. This fucking thing. I don't know if you can see this. It takes ages to load a friggin... I didn't want that. Go away. Open image in new tab. That's what I wanted to do. Right, just keep in mind, this is what we're talking about, right? This is what we're talking about, right? Let's just keep that in mind while we're having this discussion.
And so he basically put me here. There are limits to free expression in how you dress, I think.
What is it about a teacher wearing gigantic breasts that you think was inappropriate?
Just imagine the hubris it would take to... And also, this is kind of like an abusive tactic. This is like an abuser tactic, essentially. He's kind of like flipping it on you, trying to make out like there's something wrong with you for feeling uncomfortable about that, right? And if you even question, like, as if being uncomfortable is an invalid response to that, right? Remember, this is a teacher we're talking about in school around children, right? And he's trying to flip it on her for saying that she didn't like that. She think that there should be limitations on that, that he shouldn't be able to do that within a school setting in front of children. And he's literally flipping it on her straight away, going, why do you feel uncomfortable by that? Why are you a bad person? Basically, is what he's trying to do. Like, why have you thought that maybe you're a bad person because you felt uncomfortable by that? That's what he's trying to do.
Well, I don't believe fetish gear belongs in a classroom or in public. So I don't think you can go around wearing a GIMP mask or anything.
Yeah, she's advocating for public decency, basically, which is completely fine. Any normal person with a normal mind would think that.
That's inappropriately sexual.
For me, when I hear that, what comes to mind is that we as adults read things into that wear that children, I don't think, will. And I wonder why we react so negatively to those things if there's not actions or harm that's associated with them.
Right. Already, he's defending normalizing sexual fetishes to children. And I'm going to just be very, very clear right now, all right, what this man is doing. This is what sexual abusers do, right? They normalize sexual things to children. So what they'll do is they might draw a dick on a piece of paper as a joke. They foster an environment where sexual innuendo, sexual ideas are basically considered less taboo, right? They do that purposefully so that when they eventually, part of the grooming process, when they finally introduce the idea of sex, then it doesn't feel so out of place, right? And he's sitting there, bare face, going, why are we so upset about this when there's no harms involved? When he knows, well, I don't know if he knows, but I think he does know, really, that there are harms, actually. This is part of the grooming process. This is what paedophiles and child rapists do, okay? So we've got to make sure we understand exactly what this guy is about. And he's about to do some crazy psychological abuse tactics, right? Which is just disgusting to behold.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
I do not.
I can tell. Okay, we're not talking normal but large fake breasts. We're talking, honestly, I'm not exaggerating. Mm-hmm. And he was a shop teacher using a sword, so there's health and safety issues there as well. But we're talking really, truly enormous, only could possibly be for fetish purposes.
And what effect do you imagine that has on children? Do you imagine that they conceptualize what fetish means?
So what he's trying to do is blur the lines. Honestly, you need to fucking check this guy. You need to fucking check this guy. Big time. This is very worrying, everything he's saying. Because he sees no problem with normalizing fetish to children. He's saying, oh, these kids, they wouldn't even know what a fetish is. That's the point. That's how they normalize it, because they don't know. They're breaking down the boundaries. It's actually incomprehensible that he's even saying this. This is a full-on psychopathic abuser, 100%.
It's not even just children. It's nobody should be walking around dressed like that.
And by the way, this guy is a professor, an academic. This is the kind of thing that gets pushed in the academic spaces.
For adults, children, I would be deeply offended if I came across a man, and it's a man, of course, who claims to be a woman, wearing these.
In my view, I would have to examine, if I had a negative reaction to that, what was triggering my negative reaction.
So again, this is abusive tactics. He's trying to flip it on her, right? So he's saying it about himself, but he's really saying it about her. He's saying, why are you... I need to investigate why I'm having a negative reaction, as if it's invalid. He's basically trying to criticize her and say, he's doing it very, very slyly and very manipulatively, But what he's doing is he's trying to flip the script on her and basically say that she's at fault for having a negative reaction to this. And I can't, hopefully somebody points this out, but I haven't seen the rest of the video. This is as far as I got before I realized this man is a disgusting piece of shit and I needed to do this video. So,
And is there really a harm to having somebody have an outsized expression of themselves? I don't see where the harm is there. Now, of course, I don't know this case. There may be extenuating
he's got a wedding ring on. He's got a wedding ring on. If he has children, we got to be careful.
Circumstances. You say maybe there was a health and safety issue with using the equipment. I mean, if that were true, that could be a concern. But in terms of just expressing themselves, or let's take a similar thing, high school kids coming to school as a furry, I think that's up to them.
Furry is also a fetish as well.
To decide how they express themselves. And I'd need to hear an argument to change my mind that would show that there was a harm.
Okay, so the 3 minutes are up, and you moved.
I did.
What argument caused you to move?
When Mia was talking about the breasts, not particularly that moved me, but in my mind I thought like, hey, there's more nuance to this that I hadn't considered. So I was thinking like, hey, my daughter's going to go to elementary school someday. I wouldn't want a teacher to express themselves in certain ways that would be inappropriate to that profession.
All right, new claim.
They just breezed right past that. Wow. I'm actually amazed they didn't address that. That was one of the most disgusting, despicable things I've ever seen from somebody. Sitting there basically saying that fucking normalizing fetish to children, you are at fault for having a negative reaction to that. No, the negative reaction is we are actively witnessing somebody trying to groom children. That's the only point of doing that. If you're doing sexual fetish stuff around children, it's to normalize and to groom them. Nothing more. That is literally it. And if this guy doesn't know that, then he is just so deeply ignorant that it's actually concerning. But I don't think that that's true. I think he does fucking know that. So I'm not willing to give the benefit of the doubt on that. For somebody that is so methodically and manipulatively abusive in that way, the way he just casually said that to her as if she was the problem. Like, why I would have to ask myself, why am I having this negative thing? As if having that negative response is... He's saying that he wouldn't even normally have that negative response, right? Which is already concerning in of itself. That he said, if I did have that negative response, then I'd have to investigate it. That is utterly disgusting. The negative response is natural because we are obviously witnessing grooming tactics. That's the issue.
Claim. Anyone of any age should be allowed to physically express themselves however they want in private. Move.
In this one, I would still say... I would disagree. Because even in private, you can still groom and do bad things. Self-harm is a physical expression of yourself, I guess. There's many things that I'm not super stringent. I'm not like a complete prude. Obviously, people can do largely more or less what they want behind closed doors. But I do think there are things that are harmful, no matter what you want to say. And whether that's in public or private, it is kind of irrelevant. Because there's many... honestly, I guess it's just the definition of express, I suppose, is the issue here that I'm having. Would self-harm count as expression? That's kind of my issue here. So, or self-destructive stuff, like becoming an alcoholic or whatever. Because that is a physical expression, you might say. But yeah. Oh, we got Harry in the chat. Just started getting audio issues, possible grounding issues. Check if power wires are touching my... Oh, shit, okay. It might be me moving the microphone around. Maybe that's what it is. Let me know, is that any better at all? Or maybe I need to pull it back a little bit from the computer. Just let me know if that audio is okay. This microphone might be... It is a bit old. I just found it in the house. My sister's house has just randomly had this. There might be a reason that it isn't being used. So if it's a bit messed up, I might have to switch over to the inbuilt microphone on the laptop, but that's just not very good. So let me just see if... There we go, I can see it. There might be a reason that it isn't being used. So if it's a bit messed up, I might have to switch over to the inbuilt microphone on the laptop, but that's just not very good. I can hear it. There's like a... what do you call it? Kind of like a crackling sound. Yeah, I'll... There we go. Okay, there we are. That should be better now, hopefully. Let's see. I'm just waiting for the stream to catch up so I can actually hear if there's a difference. I'll just try not to touch the microphone from now on. I think it's a little bit naff. There we go. Oh yeah, that's a lot better now. There we are. That should be... It might have been the USB port actually on that side. Might just be a bit naff. All right. So yeah, I think I said what I needed to say for this, but anyway, anyone of any age should be allowed to physically express themselves however they want. In private, I think there are limitations to that. Even in private, I think there can be harmful things to people. I'm not saying it should necessarily always be illegal. Like, I don't think being an alcoholic should be illegal or whatever, but it's not. But I don't agree that it's just like okay, you know, like kind of morally or something, you know. Like, I think we have to acknowledge that there are harmful things that could be done with your physical expression, whether in public or in private, and that's my stance on this question.
Anyone of any age should be allowed to physically express themselves however they want in public. Move.
Wait, hold on.
Okay, slightly agree, go to the slightly agree, and strongly disagree, go to the strongly disagree.
So my position broadly is you know, it depends on whether I'm compelled to be there. If I'm compelled to be there for work or school or prison or some similar situation, I should not be subjected to somebody performing a sexual fetish, and because I would consider that a sexually hostile environment, and I have a right to not have that in schools and workplaces.
Yes, she's basically trying to say what I'm saying, but she's saying it in a much more polite way, that like, oh, this is sexually hostile. But yes, it is. Essentially, that is correct. Like, the grooming process is sexually hostile. It's a predatory mindset. So yeah, she's completely right to say that.
In the broader public, I favor a much broader like right to express yourself in a non-obscene way. But places of compulsory attendance, no, regardless of if they're public or not, you shouldn't have a right to just dress however you want. There should be reasonable restrictions to make it so that other people aren't harassed by the behavior.
Look at him. He's finding a way to try and turn it on her. Let's see how he turns it on her, because he's going to do it 100%.
To make it so that other people aren't harassed by the behavior.
I like that argument, and as a matter of fact, the reason that I moved from agree to slightly agree on the last go-round is I don't think I've really gotten my mind completely around the full range of what that expression could be. I had spoken on a previous claim about the concept of harm, and I think understanding when there is harm is important. Now,
How is it not just immediately obvious, though? How is it not just immediately obvious? Like, it just seems so disingenuous to me.
I am a manager in a Fortune 500 company, and when
Oh, is he? That's what he is. Okay, whatever. I thought he was an academic. Either way, though, don't really care. He's a fucking horrible person.
think about things like sexual harassment, hostile environment, I think about things that are more associated with actions and less about representations. And so
That's still an action. Putting on fetish gear is still an action. That's still a choice. That still affects people around you. If I come into work naked, you could call that a self-expression if you wanted. But what I'm really doing is exposing myself to everybody, aren't I? That's an action. That's what I'm doing. That's actually a crime.
I think I would need to see more examples of things that could be harmful and then be able to have a conversation about specific cases to really...
I really hate this kind of like fake, I don't really understand. Like, it's just so fake. Like, how could you not... It takes 2 seconds to run down the gamut in your brain of like how this would look. You know what I mean? If we had like a society where all this kind of sexual expression was just like freely out there and available, the sexual boundaries that people have in place around things like consent and stuff like that would all just start breaking down. They already kind of do, just with like the kind of kind of raunchy stuff that people wear now. And I'm not saying that excuses anybody sexually assaulting anybody or anything like that, but regardless of what anybody wants to say, the way you dress does send a signal. If I dress like a chav, people will think I might be a bit dangerous. If I dress like and I'm in a suit and tie, people will think I'm like a businessman or I'm well-to-do. If I dress like a hobo, people will think I'm homeless. If I dress like a policeman, people will think I am an authority figure. You know what I'm saying? They send a signal. If I dress like... It's that fucking Dave Chappelle skit. If you dress like a hoe, then you're going to get treated like a hoe. You're sending a signal. Again, it doesn't make it okay. I do want to make that clear. It doesn't make it okay if people cross that boundary and touch or whatever. What I'm saying is it does blur that line. That, unfortunately, and you have to be real about that. That is what that is doing. It blurs those. And so we already have those things breaking down. Just from... And it's not even that bad. It's just usually people with a bit of cleavage, or maybe they wear like some shorts that show a bit of butt cheek or something, right? Or the tight clothes or something, right? But even that creates an issue. If you had like just full-on fetish shit going on all the time, you're basically just saying, well, why don't we just have a public orgy? What's the harm in that? It's like, come on, man. What the fuck are you talking about?
further solidify my thinking on the matter.
That makes sense. And I think that there's...
I hate how polite they're being. I would just be calling him out on the spot.
Go back to Mia's example of the shop teacher with the giant fake breasts. He didn't wear those outside of it and was caught doing that. And so it was just, you asked what the harm was for the kids. The kids are having to contemplate the fact that their male teacher is wearing this costume. And why is he wearing that costume?
I wish I was there, because she's saying it in like the worst fucking way possible, right? She's basically saying, she's saying it too nicely. She's saying, oh, they've got to contemplate it. It's not contemplating it. It's putting direct fetish grooming material in front of them, which is a direct harm. If some kid basically finds that to be like interesting or wants to get involved in that in one way or another, they may enact that on another student. They may get involved. It may warp their sexuality in some way. The teacher, you have to question their motivations for why they're doing it, because it might bring students to them to be like, why are you doing this? And then if they get them in there on their own, who knows what's going to happen? So that's the fucking issue, isn't it, man? It's just so obvious. This is just very basic safeguarding shit that people... How people don't know it is just unbelievable to me.
So that's where I feel like the harassment comes in. If somebody has modified their
Obviously,
body
I'm
physically...
very passionate about this because I was sexually abused, so I know a lot about this. And it's just very bizarre to me that people don't know.
And that's just how their body is shaped now. I think that's a different story. But somebody who's wearing an elaborate fetish costume, I don't think they should be allowed to teach children. I think that there should be reasonable restrictions on that, because if it's so important for them to wear the fetish costume, are they really focused on being an educator? That seems like a reasonable sacrifice.
What is it about the fetish costume that you find offensive, or that you believe would be offensive?
Because I believe it represents that the man is in a state of self-stimulation.
It's overly sexualized, and yes, he is engaged in his own fetish, which is a sexual action in of itself. This guy is fucked, man. This guy's absolutely fucked to even ask a question like that.
And so he is preoccupied by that, and you can pick up on that. You can pick up on the behaviors and the speech patterns, and just, you have to be aware of the fact that they're, like, you know, if it's similar if somebody's like reaching really deep in their pocket and you're like aware of the fact that you don't really know what their hand is doing, and it's creepy.
Okay.
So
We're out of time.
Okay.
I have a new claim. Men should be allowed to walk around in shorts with a massive dildo in their shorts to make it look as if they have an enormous erection.
Peter Boghossian is a fucking legend. Fucking love this question. Let's go.
They should be allowed to walk around in public and take public transportation as they like. Move.
I think I'm still here.
What?
Should we be on outer mats or here?
Wait,
No,
and
you're
she
good.
literally agrees with
I
that.
would agree
You
there.
can just have a dildo and make it look like you've got a massive erection in public. That she's going to agree with that after just disagreeing with the massive breasts. Is she actually fucked in the head?
Okay, go to the absolutely disagree and step back, please. Why do you absolutely disagree with that?
I think in the same way that I don't think we should all be having sex in public, I think overt, deliberate sexual displays are not an acceptable way to behave in a...
She is so based. I just wish she wasn't so nice. I wish she could say it just like, that's fucked in the head. I just wish she would say that. That is fucked in the head. To think that that is acceptable to walk around pretending like you've got a massive boner, getting a frill off it. And you're including other people in that non-consensually by going out in the public doing it.
in a decent society.
I agree that overt sexual displays are a problem in a decent society. My issue, the reason I'm on agree, is because with the issue of like public transit, you're in the general public, there you come to the issue of like, how do you know what that bulge is? And who's going to be enforcing that, and do they have a right to against reasonable unreasonable search and seizure? Whereas if you're in a school, then it's different.
But people are getting caught up on like, should this be legal or not? I think this is just like culturally reinforced. I'm not saying anybody should get arrested. I'm saying we should acknowledge what the behavior actually is and moralize it as a culture. So if somebody's doing that, walking around with this boner, yeah, we don't know if it's a dildo or it's their real dick, and who even fucking cares? Because they purposely want people to fucking see it, don't they? So like, what is even the rationale here? It's just fucking stupid, and we don't need to do search and seizure or any of that shit. We don't need to do any of that. We can just turn around and go, you're fucked in the head, mate, and get the fuck out of here before you get slapped. It's about as simple as that.
Because you have to think about what inferences the children are making, like, because they have to be there. Whereas, you don't necessarily have to take your kids on public transit, or if you do, you can like get off and wait for them.
Oh my God. The people that can't drive have to take their kids on public transit. You dumb bitch. What the oh my God, I can't believe that I thought she had some sense. This is what I'm saying, man. These progressive types, they don't fucking get it, do they? They actually just don't get it.
Like, there's just other things you can do, and it's just, I consider that a lower level of...
They actually don't have empathy. She didn't like the boobs. I'm starting to realise she didn't like the boobs because she's a woman. Right? And also the school thing. Okay, fair enough, actually. I just forgot she said about the school thing. She's making a distinction between the fact that you have to be at the school and not have to be on the public transport stuff. But that's actually just a non sequitur. It doesn't really work anyway, because people who can't drive have to take their kids on public transport anyway. So, again, total bullshit. people have to go outside and go shopping and do all those different things. So yes, children have to be outside as well. So otherwise, what you're suggesting is a society where people just leave their kids at home all the time and they never leave the house until they're 18 years old, which is fucking retarded.
Restriction.
Just so somebody can walk around with a massive fucking dildo in their pants. That's what she's suggesting, that kind of fucking society. What a retard.
Right, I'm not going at all with policing, how you can tell whether it's real or not. I'm going with, should he do it? Is it acceptable for him
Yeah,
to
is it
do it?
culturally acceptable? Are we going to stand around and be like, that's okay? What standards are we keeping for culture and society? You know, it's a very obvious fucking question, to be
I think
quite
it's
frank.
just not. Also, sometimes, well, you have to take public transport. Normally, you're taking it because you need to get somewhere. I don't see that you can just get off because there's a man with a massive dildo in his trousers.
You know,
Sorry. Oh my God. I can't believe
But
I
what
do
if he's
this
just
for
well
life.
endowed? What if he's got a medical condition and he can't?
I hate it when people start bringing up this fucking, like, fringe case bullshit to try and justify why it might be somehow acceptable. I do think there's an element, not just to the school thing, I was going to say, there's an element to how she's framing this where it seems a bit like, because it was like a woman being lampooned with the big breasts, that she took offense to that because she's a woman. Whereas now that it's a man, it's almost like, well, you know, she's got like this weird thing around it. I mean, I don't even know. Maybe she would get off on that. Maybe that's part of the reason why she's there. Maybe she would feel like, oh, I'd like to see a big dick in some pants. You know? I'm kind of getting a weird feeling from this girl.
He has this uncontrollable erection that's
Oh,
lasted longer than 4 hours.
Priapism.
Right, but the question is, he specifically has a massive dildo.
So you can tell, you
it's
can
not
see, like,
about
the
whether,
insignia on the
whether or
side
not. Yeah, it's
through the
whether
close-up.
he
It
in
literally
the
does not matter if it's a dildo or not.
morning puts massive dildo in his trousers and then goes about his day.
Straight to jail. No trial.
But I don't think that's. I'm still here.
Are you still, did they say anything to convince you to move?
No.
Okay, so now
These
make
guys are actually tapped. Fucking watch out for these guys. Watch them out.
the connection to me. How is wearing fake prosthetic breasts different than a man walking around with an enormous dildo while he has shorts?
One is in a school with children and one is in the public.
yeah.
So then the
That's the
distinction
difference.
should
Public also has children.
be the public-private distinction.
Yeah.
Compulsory versus non-compulsory.
It's compulsory to be in public. To fucking live. What the fuck are you talking about?
Like, do you have the right to leave the situation?
Okay, got it. All right, everybody reset to neutral.
That is just
the
the
concept
fucking
of a
most-
gender identity
Arbitrary shit I've ever fucking heard in my life.
should be taught in schools.
No.
The concept of a gender
N-O. No.
identity should be taught in schools. Move.
What should be taught is there are pernicious ideologies out there, like gender ideology, that specifically tries to muddy the waters between sex and culture and tries to then use that to undermine the rights of women. That's what should be taught.
Okay, go to the strongly agree, and why don't you decide
I
among
love that all the
your-
women went that way, by the way. What a fucking bunch of legends. What a fucking bunch of legends. He is somewhat on the fence. I fucking hate these guys, man. What the fuck is going on with these guys? And this guy specifically, I'm very worried about.
yourselves who would like to go.
Who wants to go?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I should have found out if this guy was a professor or not first. Because I thought he was a professor. Because usually Peter Boghossian, he tends to have academics or journalists and stuff like that on here. So I kind of just naturally assumed, just from looking at him and stuff like that, I thought he was like a professor or something, an academic of some kind. But no, he's a businessman, I guess. He says he's part of a Fortune 500 company or some shit. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
First of all, we didn't define which level of school. So I think we would both agree that it may not be an appropriate topic for elementary school. However, I would offer that the concept of gender identity is not a new concept. For thousands of years across many, many cultures,
Sex is not an identity. Just because someone thinks they're something or expresses themselves in a certain way is basically irrelevant. You know, it's a bit like saying we should have rights for goths or something. It's very stupid. It's not an identity in like a kind of real way. An identity is implicit. It is inalienable, right? And it's just as simple as that. Your sex is not a feeling. It's not something you identify into. It's just what it is, and you either accept that or you don't. But even if you don't accept it, it's irrelevant. It is what it is anyway. It's just a fact of reality.
there has been recognition that there are people who do not fit the standard mold of male and female. And so the concept of gender identity has actually existed for thousands of years across multiple cultures.
I think
Who
that
cares? That doesn't mean shit.
you're conflating the existence of people with disorders of sexual development who physically exceed what is typical for male and female with the idea that there's been this long recognition of an internal sense inside
Also,
of a...
can we just say very quickly, when it comes to intersex and other what you might call abnormalities in sexual development, they are still within the sex binary. Okay? They're not outside of the sex binary. They're within the sex binary. They're a mutation of the two in one way or another, or they're maladapted in one way or another due to genetics. A genetic mutation or whatever, right? It's an abnormality. That's all it is. It doesn't mean that they are now suddenly some third secret sex that nobody knows about. No, that is stupid.
a person who is actually totally normal. They're totally typical in terms of how their body looks and
And
how they're...
also, we should just mention that, 99% of people who claim to be trans do not have anything like this either. So, complete bullshit to even
development
mention
looks, but for whatever reason they want to be something that they're not.
Sorry, I'm not playing no games
I
today,
don't
man.
think that it should
This
be
guy's
taught
really rubbed me up
as
the wrong way.
fact or as true or as science. And it was presented that way to me when I was in college. And as a result of that, I then pursued medical treatments that left me with chronic health problems, including osteopenia from the bone loss from the hormones.
Wow.
And so I think that it's very harmful to teach this concept at any level outside of a comparative religions class, perhaps, but it shouldn't be.
I mean, you could probably teach about the phenomenon in a university setting. Fine, whatever. These people are basically adults at this point. So, whatever, you can teach this shit, but don't be teaching it like it's fucking fact, alright? This is a belief. Just, she brought up religion, like a religion class. I think that's actually quite pertinent, because it is more like a religious belief. You know, most of the time, when somebody says they're trans, it's just a religious belief, and they're asking you to believe the same thing. You know, it's literally just the same as the Mormons knocking on your door, going, "Have you heard about the Book of Mormon? Do you want to hear about Jesus Christ?" It's basically the exact same thing. That's all it is.
Taught as like this is the cutting edge science and this is true. I don't think it should be taught as true at any level of school.
Yeah, there's no science to back it up whatsoever.
So I'm hearing a lot in your statement, which speaks to teaching as science, teaching as true. Do you believe that it's a good idea to withhold information or hide information about things that have happened, for example, in history? And just to talk about what sort of cultural things I'm thinking of,
There are times and places to teach certain parts of history, but you can't teach all of history in like a high school class. You have so many classes, you have so many years, and the classes are like, 50 minutes long? I don't even know how long they are in America or whatever. Oh, excuse me. But the point being is, you only have so much time, and you can only go into so much detail. It's not that you should withhold per se, but expecting up to high schools, if they're not doing university level courses on history and specific parts of history, usually if you're doing history, you have to specialize into a certain area. Some people they can be historians and they might not know really much of anything outside of their specific part of history that they've studied. So it might be Egyptian history, for instance, or it might be American, or it might be British medieval history, or the Dark Ages. Sometimes it will be very specific to a person, like Napoleonic history, and they will just delve into that, and that one person and their legacy and everything that happened there. This guy, I don't think, understands how this shit is fucking taught, to be frank.
Thinking about like the Hijri.
He has like unreasonable expectations about what that's going to be or what it's going to look like.
To talk about what sort of cultural things
So
I'm
he's
thinking
thinking,
about.
they should teach in history that people were delusional then, and people used to think they were the opposite sex then as well. Great. So what? Like, it's like, hey guys, there were people that were schizophrenic back in the old days. Wow, amazing. Thank you for your fantastic insight.
I'm thinking about like the Hijri in India. I'm thinking about like two-spirit people in the first peoples of America.
Some of them.
Right.
Some of them had a first name, or had a
It's like they didn't know there were schizophrenics back then. They didn't know that, but they existed. Well done. They called them shamans or whatever the fuck. Who cares? This is just irrelevant.
Dash tradition, and
Yeah.
in other tribes there was historical records that they didn't have
Why would it be
such a
important
tradition, and
to
in fact they
learn
didn't
about
like the
that?
tradition.
Yeah. But the fact that that exists and is, I would say, an undeniable fact of history, do you think that those facts should be hidden?
I don't think it should be hidden necessarily.
Who's hiding them? Everyone's got Google. You're talking about whether the schools should teach this specifically. Why? What's important about it? Why does it need to be spoken about? If people want to learn about it, they've got Google. It's very simple.
But I do think that teaching it as though it's true when it's a religious concept, and different cultures have always had, like different cultures have long had conceptions of deities, but I don't think that should be taught as a fact that
do
like.
we teach every single deity, and also do we teach that every single one of them is true scientifically somehow?
We found out through these brain scans that deities exist, or anything like that. The fact that different cultures have had different beliefs that may not be backed up by science isn't evidence that the beliefs are true.
100%. She actually demolished him on that point.
Granted, but I think there's a different standard of evidence
I'll let
between...
you finish your sentence, and then
Yeah.
we're out of time.
I think there's a different standard of evidence between proving that a deity outside of oneself exists versus expressing your personal experience of your identity.
Okay, does that mean every schizophrenic's delusion is just real? Like, what is he proposing? It doesn't matter. It is the same thing. They can't prove it. Just because they're telling you something doesn't mean it's real. Right? If somebody lies to you, it doesn't make it real. Do you understand that? Like, what the fuck?
All right, everybody go back to the neutral. All right, new claim. Young people need transgender role models. Move.
Again, on this question, not necessarily. I don't mind if they do have transgender role models. I'm not saying it's bad for them to have transgender role models, but they don't need it necessarily. They just need the role models that they need as people in general. Some people might find a resonance with a transgender role model. Some people might find a resonance with a man or a woman, or certain kinds of men, certain kinds of women that have like different kinds of lifestyles or backgrounds. It really doesn't matter. I've had lots of role models of different races, different sexes, different nationalities. I've had lots of different role models I thought were interesting, people to look up to, people to aspire to be like. So it's not a need to have a transgender role model, but again, it's just is what it is. It's like you have the role models that resonate with you. It's not. It's just you know, if that's transgender or otherwise, it's whatever. You know, yeah, it's just kind of. Yeah, I think.
All right, we're going to do something different. So you're going to switch sides and go to the strongly disagree.
He's going to get a...
And who would like to try to go to
I
the...
knew how fucking typical that he went over there.
Absolutely agree.
He's got to be some kind of queer theorist bullshit guy, right? For sure.
All right, I'll try.
Queer theory, by the way, does actually make the argument for why paedophilia is okay. So we all are aware of that.
Okay. All right, have a conversation. Try to persuade the other one that the views that you don't believe are correct.
Okay, so I think young people need trans role models. So a young transgender child or transgender adolescent needs to see a trans adult thriving and needs to know that their transness is normal, that it's healthy, that it's acceptable, and that they can live a happy life medicalized.
I disagree. I think that trans is a dysfunction. It is not something that we should reify into an actual thing. And so having role models artificially encourages something that should not be encouraged.
Or
At least they can both argue from the other side, which does mean that they can acknowledge and understand where the other one is coming from. So this is quite important for them to do this, I think. But I don't know. I don't know if it's really going to bring that guy around, though, in any way, to be honest.
having public transgender figures means that these young transgender children and adolescents, they feel comfortable coming out. We saw it with Jazz Jennings when the I Am Jazz show was aired. Whole classes or whole, high school grades, 12 kids, 13 kids coming out as trans after they had watched Jazz Jennings. So that shows that they're comfortable and feel accepted and they can come out and be who they are.
Okay, new claim. People should be allowed to change their sex on legal documents to reflect their gender identity.
No. No way. In fact, one of the answers to the bathroom question, when all the trans people are spurging out going, "Oh my god, what are you going to do? Are you going to check their genitals before you go in the toilet? Are you going to reach in their pants and pull out their big floppy dick? Oh my god, oh!" That's what they say. Well, guess what the answer is, you bozo? It's having an ID with your sex marker on it, you fucking stupid bitch.
Move.
So if somebody suspects somebody of being a certain way, you might not always catch it. Yeah, we can't police it perfectly, probably. But if you suspect, and you ask, if you're a part of an establishment, like a restaurant or whatever the fuck it is, and you ask, and you just say, "Hey, can you show me your ID, please?" Boom, there you go. That's all you need to do. "Oh, you're a male. Actually, go in that toilet. Sorry, can't go in there." Boom, job done.
So here's what we're going to do. Somebody is going to go over to the strongly agree, and you're going to make arguments that you think someone who would stand on the strongly agree mat would make, and we're going to see if they match his arguments.
I fucking hate this wishy-washy guy in the middle constantly as well. He's a fucking... I was going to say the F slur, but I'm not going to say it on stream. I don't want it to get taken down.
Would you like to do that? Okay, so go to the strongly agree. Okay, someone stand on the absolutely disagree.
I'll go with that. Okay, sure. Okay.
Okay, someone standing on that mat, what argument would they give? Why would they be standing there?
Somebody standing on this mat would argue that a person, especially after medicalization, looks like the target gender, the target sex category, and therefore requiring them to keep the original sex on their identification will lead the identification to be rejected and may open them up to discrimination, harassment, and other maltreatment. And further, if you accept the concept of gender dysphoria, it will trigger the gender dysphoria, and then this will
there's obvious flaws with this logic, because if it's on your documents, who's, literally looking at your documents? Who, other than maybe employers and stuff like that, but in day-to-day life, this is just not going to be a problem, is it? Really, let's just face it. So it's just kind of irrelevant. I find a lot of this stuff kind of irrelevant.
Have allegedly catastrophic effects on their mental health, and this could lead to behaviors that are dangerous to self or others.
Okay. Is that why you're there?
It's not, but it's almost a better reason.
Oh, that's a better reason than the reason you had. Is that reason so good that you'd be willing to move to absolutely agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is how fucked in the head he is he heard that, did not hear any flaws in the logic, and went to totally agree. I do quite like how Peter Boghossian is more or less exposing him on this video. He's kind of exposing this man, like, in a very not direct way, but in a very open way, where he's kind of doing it to himself. He's giving him his own rope to hang himself with.
Okay. Okay. What is your reason for standing there?
So for me, it's like, I think for most of the time, it's like we're allowing men to say that they're women, and then we're allowing men into women's spaces, sometimes in prisons or bathrooms or other places where I feel like they could have nefarious reasons, because it doesn't mean that they have to be medicalized. Because if we're going at gender ID, they can be any man, and this has happened to me in real life, where I enter a bathroom and there's a 6'3" construction worker who says they're a woman with a penis. I don't necessarily feel comfortable in that situation. So I do feel that women may not really go for this concept in general. I personally don't feel like it's safe for women. When men...
because at this point, where it's at now, it's not gone so far that this is happening super regularly, right? The point is, the reason why we need to nip it in the bud is because it could open the floodgates to all manner of abuses of this situation. And that's what people are trying to avoid. Whereas the trans people would prefer it to get to the point where these fucking crazy rapes and stuff are happening in toilets all the time. They want it to get to that point to then to be able to say, oh, maybe this wasn't a good idea, even though anyone with an ounce of empathy could go down the logic chain and figure this out in about 2 seconds.
And identify as women in situations where they're literally not women, though. So that's kind of how I feel.
Do you have a response to that, if you believe that and you were standing there?
The response I would give if I believe this would be that that you're really objecting to male sexual predators, which are way more likely to be cis men, and the cis men don't need to identify as trans or present as trans. So why are we punishing?
Yeah, but they do, though, to get into the women's spaces. They have to do that to get in there in the first place, right? That's the point.
These innocent...
So if you think cis men are just barging into women's toilets to do this shit, they're obviously more likely to be caught. They're more likely to be spotted, being like, what the fuck? If you open up the floodgates of, well, we just have guys coming in and out of women's toilets anyway, so we can't pay any attention to this. You're basically asking for a situation where that you're leaving that thing vulnerable. It's not out of the ordinary now. It's just so... I know she doesn't believe this, but it's just... I hate this line of thinking, man. It's just so blatantly... Not only is it false, but it's just so deeply unempathetic. It's narcissistic and it's entitled as fuck.
Trans-identifying men, these innocent trans women, and forcing them to endure this lifetime of discrimination and harassment and maltreatment and dysphoria, and having their IDs rejected, just so that you can imagine that you feel safer and not have to glance over and wonder about what sex another person is. Some women look like men already, and especially trans men. Are you saying that you want the trans men to come in, or do you want Buck Angel to come into the women's room? Wouldn't that upset you? And that your emotions surrounding who else is in your space are less important than allowing these men to have this function of an ID that seems to match their appearance.
Was that accurate, what she said?
Roughly, yes.
Roughly, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to distill that down, and this may not be exactly correct. Can you explain to them why your safety, your physical safety, is more important than the emotional comfort of somebody? You could tell her.
I do think many women have dealt with men being kind of aggressive towards them. So I don't think that their feelings matter as much as my safety or any woman's safety for that matter.
Why?
Because if we were to get harmed, then I think it would destroy the trans movement to begin with. But honestly, I just think it's dangerous, ultimately. Because I do feel that there are definitely going to be some people who are going to be like, oh, I could just be trans now, and I can go from a male prison to a female prison, and I could do the same crimes that I was getting incarcerated for to women in prison who are even more vulnerable than women on the outside.
Do you agree with that?
100%.
Are you willing to sacrifice the physical safety of a certain number of women if it will safeguard the emotional safety of trans women going into women's
No, never.
spaces?
Definitely not. I just don't think that that's reasonable because they already have the advantage of being a man, so they're stronger than women. It's like, and then you're putting them in with real, like I say real women. I hate to say that, but that's the truth. And
Why
then
do you hate to say real women? No, don't ever apologize for that. I could see it on her face as well. She was a bit like, did you really?
we're less safe, but they're like better off, and you see that in everything.
Sometimes some women are just too fucking nice, man.
Sports, like they're outperforming biological women and things like that. Yeah, but I definitely don't agree that women's safety should be sacrificed for their emotional well-being.
Okay, so you've heard both of these sides. Do you have, can you come up to the neutral? Do you have a question for each one?
While I was hearing what you had to say, I kept looking at the slightly disagree, thinking, should I move over to that mat? And what I was thinking about was like, I think you make a good point. Like, there could be bad actors, right? Someone could cheat the system. I'm wondering if there's some sort of alternate solution that might work for everybody, that might satisfy everyone.
I don't know. It's like you have to like either buy into the idea of trans or not. So as far as I'm concerned, men are men and women are women. So like just believing you're a woman is just, I don't know. It doesn't change the fact that you're a man entering a woman's space.
Would you be, because you said you thought about it, what prevented you from moving?
I guess uncertainty, like maybe there's
This man
some...
is fucking spiritually castrated. That's what this guy is. He's fucking got no balls. He's absolute coward. Cowardice personified. That's what this man is. The other man is more of a malicious actor. He is actually dangerous, in my opinion, the other one. This guy is just a fucking castrated eunuch. That's what this guy is.
sort of system, alternate system we could have in place that would prevent bad actors from abusing the system. I don't know what that looks like. I don't have a solution there, but...
Would you like to ask a question? Can you guys swap, please?
Yeah, like, you heard her talk about safety and potential bad actors, right? Do you think that there might be a better solution that will work for everybody, that will protect her safety while also protecting the interests of trans people?
Me saying that there's a better solution would be first to have to acknowledge that there's a problem. And the thing that
So
I've
he doesn't want to
I've
acknowledge that there would even be a problem. This is the fucking... See what I mean when I say this guy's dangerous? He doesn't want to even go down the logic chain. He doesn't have empathy, clearly. Like, he doesn't want to go down the logic chain. He just wants to appear to be a good person. But he's obviously not a good person. You know what I mean?
to, and I was sitting back there on the mat and realizing what it says on my, that's in here, what it says on my driver's license, what my gender is not what's preventing me from coming into the bathroom when you're in there. If I'm a predator, having an official diagnosis and a change in my passport is not the thing that's keeping me from going into or not going into the bathroom.
That's complete bullshit. Fucking guys who want to rape and all that kind of stuff, yeah? They know they can't just do some obvious shit like go into a women's bathroom like that and not have it be noticed, because it would be out of the ordinary. People would raise an alarm. If you're breaking down these barriers and saying, oh, they can just go in, and nobody would bat an eyelid at it, that's when the abuses can start to happen. God damn, man, I don't actually believe that this guy can be that dumb. It's not dumb. I think he's genuinely dangerous. I'm actually very worried about this guy.
That has always seemed to me to be a
Like, I feel like the next thing out of his mouth is, I don't really see the harm why children can't consent to sex, you know? Like, they just... and I'd have to wonder, like, why am I having a negative reaction to feeling that way, feeling negative about that statement? Like, this is the kind of fucked up sociopathic thing, because he puts everything in, like, this kind of kindly, non-assuming tone and voice, but if you look at in his eyes and you look, there's a coldness there. He is calculated, this person. It's very fucked.
pretty far reach in terms of an argument. Now, I do understand that women perceiving somebody who doesn't seem like a woman does feel unsafe. I'm not sure that I have a good solution for that. Well, no, I take that back. Because I've been many places, particularly in Europe, where the norm is to have gender-free bathrooms, where the only gendered space, well, there are no gendered spaces. If you want to go do something where genitals need to be exposed, you go into a private stall, and everything else is common. So I think having a better structure for bathrooms, now, is that the only gendered space? No. I think different solutions need to be come up with for different spaces.
I'm gonna swap you in. Come on in, and you go back.
Said something kind of.
Oh yeah, and then you come back too. Is there a point that you'd want to make that hasn't been made so far, or is there a comment that you would want to make to either one of them that hasn't been made?
I think maybe just to comment more on the third bathroom option, maybe, or just the one bathroom. I mean, it has a lot to do.
Why don't they just use the disabled bathrooms?
With culture, I think, and sexualizing men and women, and you know, if you can eliminate that sexualization, you might have a safer area. How you could do that, I couldn't tell you. You're not going to. Not today.
So why are you on the absolutely agree for that? Not changing sex.
I guess
on
I
legal
would
documents?
probably move over a little bit, but
It's a
not
free
much.
country. If you want to move, you can move.
Because like I said, like to be able to get to the point where you feel safe, I don't think we're there. That's why I'm here.
Okay, all right. We're gonna swap you out and then you in. So why are you on the absolutely disagree?
Well, we've strayed a little bit from the actual claim, I think,
Yeah,
because we were just
agreed.
talking about legal documents, and I
Correct.
think legal documents should always reflect reality. So if you're male,
Can we just say
you're
how
legal.
amazing and beautiful this woman is right now? How amazing, beautiful, and based she is. She's had every single correct and right opinion every single time. Highly intelligent, not a bad actor, pure of soul. We love her.
Legal documents must say so. Just as I could identify as 6'2", it wouldn't make me 6'2". I'm still 5'2". Legal documents record facts, but I want to talk about spaces.
All right, let's reset to the neutral. New claim. We should segregate bathrooms and changing rooms based on sex. Move. Okay, come to the neutral. Decide amongst yourself who's going to go to the mat in front of you. We haven't heard from you very much, but is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay?
I was kind of thinking the same thing.
Okay, I'll let you have a three-way conversation. You have 4 minutes.
So I think the bathrooms and changing areas should absolutely be segregated on the basis of sex. And it's a pretty mechanistic explanation, which is that males produce one kind of cell and females produce another kind of cell. And when they combine, that has horrific health consequences for the female specifically. It never has consequences for the male. Further, men can eject these cells across the room. So we need a screen when we're in states of undress, at least. So therefore, they should be segregated on the basis of sex.
I want to share kind of a personal anecdote. I do street epistemology. I went to a campus in the western of Wisconsin, and I talked to this young lady, and she told me about her college's bathroom policy, and I thought it was pretty intriguing. I always looked at bathrooms as you either have to use the self-identity way, or you have to do the sex, the biological way, right? The school's policy was a little bit different. So on all the floors except one, it was by biology, right? It was, males there, females there, no exceptions. And then they had one floor where all the bathrooms you could self-identify. You could use whichever bathroom you were most comfortable with. And that really struck me as an interesting idea. Like, I thought it kind of worked out. I think it allowed everybody who attended the college to be comfortable. And I think it just solved the problem to this. It was a solution
I think
to the
there
problem.
is something to be said for, the bathroom thing is not something that I care about that much. I've been in unisex bathrooms before. There was a little bit of a trend for it in the UK, I want to say about 10, maybe 12 years ago. There was a bit of a trend in nightclubs and other places, but it turned out that they stopped doing it because it just did cause certain problems. So, like, fights kick off a lot of times in bathrooms, in nightclubs and stuff like that, right? And because of that kind of stuff, like, the girls obviously didn't like that. Also, when everyone's drunk and stuff like that, it just caused certain issues. Guys would, like, think it'd be funny to, like, jump up on the stall and look over and at women or whatever, and just being fucking weirdos and shit. And I don't know if anything super serious happened. I don't know if, like, there was, like, a string of, rapes or anything. I don't know if that necessarily happened. I'd have to look into it to see what the full reasons were as to why. But I just think in general, though, I think it did just cause a lot of mither overall. So they just kind of stopped. People just kind of stopped doing it. And when he's talking about Europe, they kind of do the same thing. I think it just depends on the setting and the context of what it is. And generally speaking, I would probably favour more the biological sex segregation for bathrooms. I'm not against unisex. I just think you've got to be kind of careful how you implement it, the context of where you're implementing that. Maybe in a supermarket, not that big of a deal, but in a nightclub, you might want to sex segregate. It's difficult to really pin it down, but I think it's up to the kind of private institution themselves, like how they want to do it, how they want to police that. It's not much more we can really say about that, to be fair.
That they were having.
What was the problem that they were having?
Individuals being uncomfortable with other individuals in their restroom.
So they solved the problem of women not being comfortable with men in their restroom by mixing the sexes in the restroom? I don't understand how that solved the problem.
I think you may have misunderstood.
I must
so, let's.
Did she not pick up what he was putting down there? He said on every floor of the building, it was segregated by sex. There was just one floor where they had unisex bathrooms. It was not. He did say it kind of clunkily, to be fair, but I got what he was saying, like, pretty easily. And then it just meant that, like, basically there was a floor in the building that the trans people could go in, essentially, and then the trans people were happy and they'd stop fucking complaining incessantly.
Let's say it had 4 floors. 3 of those floors, the bathrooms on them. Only females who were born female could use those restrooms. Males who were born males could only use that restroom. So you always had that option to use that restroom.
I'm not sure if I'm really that
But then on one of the
interested in this
floors,
question.
if you were to, go up the stairs, go down the stairs, whatever.
Oh, he hasn't done his...
Those restrooms on that floor were available to anybody, however you identified.
Got it. I do agree that there should be a single stall
no
unisex
pronoun
disability
use.
third option anywhere that there's multi-stall
Gender
sex
ideology
segregated
disappears.
spaces.
Pronoun
And that's not
use,
just for trans
do we
people, but
really
it's
wanna
also
cover that
for
on
anybody
here?
who has a disability that requires more security,
wondering-
more time.
I'm wondering, because I feel like I've said everything I really want to say here, because realistically, the thing that really piqued my interest about this video was when this guy was more or less defending what you would call, like, sexual grooming to children. He was more or less making the argument as to why that would be okay, and he was in favor of it. So, yeah, definitely, I don't know, just some weird stuff going on there. So we got no pronoun use and gender ideology disappears. I'm not sure if I really care about these last few subjects. I don't really care about the bathroom that much. I think I've said everything I need to say about this. Just want to leave a warning, a little bit of consideration for anybody watching this. But basically, when people engage in these manipulative kinds of academic styles of what would you call it? They're just these manipulation tactics, right? They're trying to flip stuff on you, like, oh, why would you feel weird about somebody exercising their fetish in front of you, engaging in their fetish in front of you? Why should you be? Why would you feel negatively about that? I think you need to investigate that. That is just like psychopathic, horrible shit, and just watch out for that kind of stuff. Don't nip it in the bud. Just call it out for what it is exactly. You do not need to pussyfoot around. You don't need to worry about offending them or upsetting them. It's nothing like that, because these people, you have to remember, these people are trying to create the pathway to consent to sex with children is okay. If children can they're basically trying to create the pathway to children can consent to sex. That's what the pathway that they are going down. And you could call it a slippery slope all you want, but it's been written in queer theory. I'm not just pulling this out of my arse. You can go and look into it yourself. There's YouTube videos about it, right? That go over the literature, by the way, not just random people talking about it. They're going over specifically the literature and the writers, the people, the philosophers who came up with this. Foucault, Jacques Derrida, all these people, all these French postmodernists who are basically the godfathers of queer theory and whatnot. They literally signed, and they did this several times. It wasn't just a one-time thing. They tried it several times. They tried to petition the French government. Simone de Beauvoir as well, prominent feminist, by the way, who is basically advocating for the rape of children. They wanted to roll back. They petitioned the French government to abolish age of consent laws, which is basically making child rape legal, right? So we've got to get it in our heads, guys. It's not a fucking conspiracy theory, right? They've openly said it and openly tried to do it. In fact, in Germany, the progressives there, after World War II, the progressives there put little boys with paedophiles. It was a whole program. They did it for decades. They put paedophiles with little boys in the foster system from the orphanages to be raped. And they thought that was the progressive thing to do for paedophiles. That's what they thought. That's how fucking progressives think. They're psychopathic. All they think about is their own pleasure, their own hedonism, and they're trying to rationalise how it's justified and how it's okay. We cannot allow that to happen, all right? Simple as that. Anyway, that's me for today. But thank you, everyone, for joining and watching the stream. I'll probably be back again tomorrow. I'm just going to, if I see a video that I think is worth responding to, I'm just going to give it a shot, basically, and just see what the deal is with it. Just have some fun. I'm not going to be streaming really long hours like I did yesterday. That was just me fucking having a laugh. And to be honest, the audio was really bad, so I don't really blame anyone for not watching it. But there was a pretty good debate. If you can stand the audio, there was a pretty interesting debate with a guy that... how would you say this? I'm trying to put it in a good way. He basically just loves immigrants. He just loves them so much. He thinks immigrants are just the best thing ever. He's also a leftist Marxist, but he thinks that the capitalist tool of mass migration is like the most amazing thing of all time. Many such cases, unfortunately. Also, he ended up agreeing with everything that I said, eventually. Because there's no way of disputing the logic. There's just no way of disputing what I'm saying, because it's perfect logic. And he just didn't understand it. Well, it's not that he didn't understand it. It's just that he has he had cognitive dissonance.
More
he
privacy.
had cognitive dissonance about he's been propagandized to think that immigrants are just good no matter what, right? No logic behind that. It's irrational completely. And it was a very bizarre debate, and it went on for quite some time. But it was very illuminating to how certain people think, I think. Very illuminating. But anyway, that's me for today, guys. Have a good day. I'll see you around. Like I say, I'll probably be back tomorrow, to be honest. Alright. Ta-da! Oh, wait. Tumbleweed said, "Crazy mental gymnastics for real." I don't know if you're talking to me or the people or about the debate that I had, but I'm about to go now anyway, so unfortunately I can't really stay and have this discussion. But yeah. Anyway, see you later, guys. See you tomorrow.